Welcome to your digital fluid balance training. The aim of this training is to show you how to complete the digital fluid balance chart and how to access it. It will include how to start a new chart, inputting data, deleting data, discontinuing a chart, and entering retrospective data. The purpose of the fluid balance chart is to give a clear vision of the positive or negative fluid balance on a day-to-day and cumulative basis. There are two ways in which you can access the digital fluid balance chart, via an iPad or via the clinical compass on the intranet. If a patient is already commenced on a chart or has a chart from a previous admission, you can view this on your desktop. Log in as usual via the clinical compass, which is accessible via the intranet as shown here. The clinical compass only allows you to view the chart. You cannot submit data this way. Once you have logged in, select your ward from the drop-down list. Then select your patient from the ward list that is on a fluid balance chart to view their chart. The patients on fluid balance charts will have an icon in the indicators column. Here are the icons which will show on the main ward view and what they mean. The first logo of black writing on a white background is to show that the patient is on a fluid balance chart. The second, which is amber with black writing, is to show that the patient is on a fluid restriction and a fluid balance chart. Now I will show you how to access the fluid balance chart via an iPad. This is for patients that have already been commenced on a fluid balance chart. It is built within the EOBS application, so you can access this in the same way that you access the patient's other observations. Sign in via the EOBS app, select your patient from the ward list, which will bring up the patient's bubble. Click on Chart. This will bring up the patient's observation chart. Click on the menu button circled here in red. Then select Show Fluid Chart. You can also access it by clicking on Cumulative Fluid on the observation chart and then Access Full Fluid Chart. Here is an example of what the fluid balance chart will look like with data inputted. Default view shows the current inputs and outputs being used, but you can see all the columns by using the Toggle Columns button circled here in red. You can review a previous day's fluid balance chart as well as a previous episodes from a prior admission by clicking on the episode at the bottom of the screen, also circled in red. Here I will show you how to commence a fluid balance chart digitally on EOBS. The fluid balance should only be used for patients who need to have it, not routinely for all patients. Once you have selected your patient, the system will ask you to select a reason for commencing the fluid balance chart. A drop-down list will show on the screen. These are UHD approved reasons for a patient to be on a fluid balance chart. Therefore, if none of them apply, your patient does not need one. Please select your reason from the list and then press Start New Fluid Chart. You will then be shown the following message. The fluid balance chart will only be active after submitting your entries. If a fluid balance chart has been started in error, then please select Abandon at the top left of the screen. Doing so will mean that any changes during this login for that patient will not be recorded. Please select OK on this message. You will then be able to input either a fluid input or fluid output for this patient. If your patient is on a fluid restriction, please select Yes now. The volume of restriction must be documented in the medical notes. Please also ensure that there is an indication that the patient is on a fluid restriction at the patient's bedside so that all those involved in the patient's care are aware. To submit a reading, click on Fluid Input. The drop-down list will give you the options of different inputs. For this patient, I have selected oral fluid. In the next field, you can input the volume in mils, either exact or estimated, and then press Add. Please do not click on Next prior to clicking Add, as this will not successfully input the data. You can add multiple inputs at a time, and you can submit a fluid entry in isolation even if observations are due. When you have added the data, a pop-up box will show briefly to confirm the data has been added successfully. Inputs should be recorded after they have been administered and should be measured and recorded in milliliters. Make sure you count all tubes and pegs before you record the inputs and check their condition, for example, that the cannula has not tissued. Once you are happy that you have submitted everything correctly, Press Next and your screen will show the total daily fluid balance and the cumulative balance. Any IV readings must be submitted by a trained member of staff who is competent in the administration of IV medications. They must also confirm that the pump has been reset to 0. Please ensure that you are inputting the volume infused rather than the rate of infusion. This is because the system is unable to calculate volume infused and requires this to be inputted. These entries should also be done after it has been infused, as per the other inputs. It is up to the user to ensure that they have looked at the last entry before making any other entry. All IV inputs need to be exact and not estimated. For blood components, the person entering the data should be assessed as competent in the administration of blood components, in addition to their IV administration competency. If you are entering data for the hour you are currently in, you do not need to use the retrospective data drop-down. If entering anything over 1 hour, you will see in the drop-down for retrospective data that the first 4 hours are highlighted in green, and anything after is highlighted in red. It is best practice to document on the patient's fluid balance chart at a minimum of every 4 hours, as per NICE guidelines. Anything submitted after 4 hours is classed as reportable in the background. Here is an example of the retrospective data entry shown within the full chart with an R next to it. Data entered during the hour will not have the R next to it. When submitting an output, you would do this in the same way as submitting an input. Click on Fluid Output and then select from the drop-down menu which output you are documenting. We have put together an extensive list of potential outputs. This means you may need to scroll down the list to find the option that you require. If the output that you require is not on the list, then please click on Other. This then needs to be documented in the notes. In this instance, I have used urinary catheter and 100 ml exact. Press Add, then press Next. Where a patient urinates out to the toilet, please ensure that they have bedpans accessible and are aware that they need to inform a staff member. The option of urine is for those using bedpans and urinary catheter is for catheters. When choosing the output, please ensure you are calling it the same as it has been named previously. This is particularly important with drains being labelled correctly to its location when the patient has multiple in situ. When you have selected your output, it will give you a further option to label it. For example, if we select abdominal drain, it then gives the option to record the site of that drain. It gives us options of upper or lower, left, right or centre, and labels A to E. For surgical drains, please look in the surgical notes for the name and location of the drain to ensure consistency of labelling. You do not need to select all of the options. For example, you could call the drain abdominal drain left A. What is most important is that the drain bag itself is labelled the same as the chart, so that everyone involved in the patient's care is aware which drain is which when there are multiple. Another example would be a chest drain, labelled chest drain left or chest drain right. You have the option with outputs to enter 0 as a value. This is to show that the drain has stopped draining, but that you have checked it. Please continue to use a drain chart separately to the fluid balance chart to document the drain management, for example, bubbling or swinging, or if it has been flushed or clamped. Please ensure that the drain is labelled on the drain management chart the same that is on the fluid balance chart. To complete the process, you must review and submit your readings. It is very important at this stage that you review carefully, as once you click Next, you are not able to edit any of this information, only delete it. The following screen may give you some advice and guidance. Please press Submit and complete the process. If you need to end a patient's fluid balance chart because they no longer require it, then you click on End Fluid Monitoring, highlighted here in red. This will then bring up another screen where it will ask you to make the decision to end the fluid balance chart. It states that this decision must be made by a trained and appropriately senior member of staff, and that this must be documented in the medical notes. You must select Yes if you wish to discontinue the fluid balance chart, or No if you wish to return to the previous screen. Data can be deleted once submitted within an hour of submission, in the same way observations can be deleted. Select the patient in the main ward view screen, then select Delete. Select your reason for deleting the data out of wrong patient or wrong data, and then select Delete all of the above. If you have completed a set of observations at the same time, then all of the data will be deleted and the whole set will need to be resubmitted. On the fluid balance chart, the deleted data will still be visible, but will have a red cross through it and will not be counted in the total or cumulative balance. If you need to print the patient's fluid balance chart, you must access it via the Clinical Compass on the intranet. By clicking on the menu button, you can show or hide deleted observations and print the fluid balance chart. This may be because you are transferring the patient to an area where they are not using the digital format. If you are concerned about your patient's fluid balance, please escalate this to a more senior member of staff and arrange for a medical review. Please consider oliguria, where a patient does not seem to be urinating enough. That is less than 0.5 mils per kilogram per hour over more than a 6-hour period for adults or more than 8 hours for under 18-year-olds. If the urine output is less than 10 mils an hour for greater than 8 hours, then please consider anuria. Please consider polyuria, where the patient is urinating more than 3 litres in a 24-hour period, or whose urine output is 5 times or more their target amount. The system will not allow previous day data entry before 12 AM if it is after 12 AM. For example, if submitting fluid inputs or outputs from 11 PM at 1 AM, you will not be able to input this data. Irrigation does not add to the cumulative balance but will show on the chart. Please ensure that you are documenting this correctly. For example, 3,000 mils of irrigation goes in and 3,100 mils comes out. Document 3,000 mils irrigation input and 3,000 mils irrigation output and 100 mils urine catheter output. You have come to the end of your digital fluid balance training. Please ensure that you have documented that you have been trained on your ward spreadsheet. It is your responsibility to complete the fluid balance chart correctly, so if you feel that you need more support or training, then please contact the Clinical Digital Nursing and Professions team on our email so that we can facilitate this. Thank you for listening.